Within the mining industry, we actually benefit from having a social license already in place. Hi, my name is Jamie Strauss. I'm the founder and CEO of Digbee. Digbee launched an ESG disclosure platform earlier this year for the mining industry. ESG disclosure is increasingly impacting all mining companies across all sectors of the world. Within the mining industry, we actually benefit from having a social license already in place. The problem is that ESG disclosure or the mining industry is now behind the curve in terms of ESG disclosure generally. The capital markets are massively ahead of the curve and incorporating ESG as part of their due diligence into all companies. It's going to become increasingly difficult for mining companies to raise capital from institutional investors without an appropriate means of disclosure of ESG credentials. But there's huge upside, not just for the individual companies, but the sector as a whole, and also all of the third parties and stakeholders that relate to mining. First of all, Digbee ESG has been endorsed by leading stakeholders of the industry, giving management the confidence to effectively know that what they are disclosing will be impacted by those third parties. Also, Digbee ESG allows management to know what to disclose with a right-sized set of frameworks. It gives your board of directors the appropriate information that they need to meet their own obligations on ESG. And also it allows you to compare and contrast your company against your peers and competitors. And ultimately, it gives a report back to the management in order to analyze a gap analysis and take action on the ground to improve over coming years and months. So this is a quick walkthrough and demonstration of Digbee ESG. So Digbee ESG's platform is available at thedigbee.com. Initially, we set up with our database of all the companies in our database. But even if you're not in the database, we can incorporate you. Here we have an individual called Samuel Marshall who's signed up into Digbee. He's related to a couple of organizations, and we want Samuel to effectively start a new submission for ACME Exploration. We go on and we sign the heads of the terms for Digbee ESG. And then there's a brief introduction of the process to allow Samuel to understand, to know what to expect in terms of going through the process. On the left, you will see a navigation, the introduction, which then leads to a couple of other areas of setting up before getting into the tailored questions for your company, and ultimately a review and a submission before it gets assessed. Here we've moved on to the ESG Submission Team. It's unlikely to be one person, so we can include people internally and also externally, perhaps with your consultants. We can go on and invite a new team member and give them certain permissions to effectively go forward, incorporate them onto the Digbee team or onto the Digbee site to be used within your team. And you can then see the new invitees. Once we've got the team set up, it's then a matter of going in to make sure that the relevant projects are in place. And you can see here, we've got a number of different projects already loaded. If we need to incorporate new projects, we can add additional projects into the system. We also need to just add whichever level the company, the most advanced study is for the project, so that we can tailor the questions relevant to the company and its projects. We then get into the heart of the process where the ESG questions are effectively set up. Every company has a set of corporate questions. It's about 25 of them for an exploration stage company. And then each project has its own set of questions, about 45 of them, again, for an exploration company. In the case of this, we're into the corporate section, and you can see the navigation here with regards to this question, which relates to the board structure And we provide a number of different templates to help people fill out simply the required information. Each question then is structured in a similar way throughout the whole process, with both a response, a guidance, and the rationale for why that question's been asked, but most importantly also to link and anchor each question to the related standards. Digbee ESG has been aligned to the core global standards which can be related to the mining industry. Here we've got a link which can effectively be sent that question to somebody else in your team so that they can effectively answer that question if required. You can see the answer here with regards to the question is either a tick box or can have some narrative incorporated. And every question then has an ability to upload evidence to support that answer. When we get into, now we're into the project questions, and you can see here a similar set of structure, but you can identify here not only the question guidance, which is identified here, but also the related standards that question effectively relates to, the underlying answer, and then the narrative is still available and the evidence. We then come to a review, and it's important in corporate governance these days to make sure that the board of directors are fully incorporated within ESG and that they've assessed and considered ESG in their decision making. So this allows a PDF to be put together with regards to all of the questions and answers, can be sent to the board for their review, and then when it is ready for submission, it can then effectively be sent by a board appointed person with an accompanying narrative to go with it to Digbee. And at that time, we then raise an invoice. It's important that the frameworks are freely available to encourage adoption and to allow management to effectively consider how their approaches need to be done over time before they come to a submission. Here we can effectively request an invoice. The typical cost for an exploration company is $10,000 for a corporate, plus $4,000 for each disclosable project that they submit. The invoice effectively is paid for or requested, and that's really the end of the journey in terms of the submission. Okay, so Digbee ESG is a platform and therefore serves both sides of the equation. And here we have ACME Exploration, who has already submitted and completed their ESG submission. You can see here they've taken an opportunity to hide their scores for up to 13 months on their inaugural score, allowing them to do a second submission and then getting a direction of travel with regards to their ESG journey. Here is a company, ACME, who has now come off that 13 months, and you can see that their score was a BBB with the confidence band CC to AAA, and you can then go into the detail of the score. In this case, this is the overall score with some of the detail that goes on around it. Again, the BBB with the confidence range around it. Importantly, you can use these to embed within your company literature and communicate to your stakeholders and wider, maybe third parties and local stakeholders. You can compare and contrast with other companies on a context-driven basis. About 50% of the project questions are context-based, and you can then effectively compare against relevant companies that you may choose to compare against. In this case, these two companies here. Go into a little bit more breakdown within the scores, and beyond the overall score, you can then effectively see the pros and cons, overarching pros and cons relating to the entire submission, or even go into more detail of the corporate and project positives and also negatives, helping not only management but boards of directors as well as third parties and stakeholders to view ESG generally. More graphically, we've provided a tornado chart. In this case, this is a project tornado chart, relates to the project questions. The context you can't do an awful lot about. That is the nature of the project with which you have. But where the action questions come in, effectively, one can effectively try and move them from the left to the right to improve scores over time. And lastly, you can also see the direction of travel over different submissions with regards to ESG scoring. And you can also go into the final detail of each question and the answer, although we do allow evidence provided to support any answer to be hidden where necessary. At the same time, we encourage transparency in the nature of ESG in principle, and therefore will give positive scores or positive scoring for that. Thank you very much.